Hi, John McElroy here talking all things automotive. And the topic for today is the UAW, the United Auto Workers. The way I read it, the union's going to go extinct unless it makes significant changes to the way it tries to organize plants, to the high levels of absenteeism it tolerates, or to the uncompetitive work rules that it's bargained into place. I don't want this to come off as anti-union. Look, when I was working my way through college, I was a UAW member. I paid my dues to Local 600 at Ford's Rouge plant and later to Local 900 at Ford's Livonia transmission plant. And when I was at the Rouge, I made good money. Inflation adjusted to today, I made $54 an hour. I was 19 years old, just a year out of high school, and didn't have any skills. If people wonder whether or not the American middle class has declined over the last half century, there's your answer. Who's coming out of high school today and making $54 an hour? And I've got the UAW to thank for being able to work my way through college. Without those jobs, I could have never afforded it. And I'd love to see the union help reboot the standard of living for the American middle class. But right now, the UAW is caught in a downward spiral that it cannot pull out of. Let's look at it in business terms. The UAW is losing market share. When I was a member in the union, it had about 1.3 million members, but it's been falling ever since. It dipped under 1 million years ago. And as recently as 2017, there were over 430,000 UAW workers. Today, it's at 372,000. That's a drop of more than 58,000 union members in just the last 4 years. So what happened to all those UAW jobs? Well, the jobs did not go away. They just went to non-union car companies. Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Subaru, BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, Volvo, Hyundai, and Kia have all built manufacturing facilities in the United States. Altogether, they employ about 110,000 workers, and not one of those workers is represented by the UAW. I'll also note that none of these plants are in Michigan. That's because Michigan is the home to the UAW, and none of the foreign car companies wants to deal with the union. This is going to be very unpopular to say, but the UAW is preventing the state of Michigan from attracting good-paying manufacturing jobs. And then you've got the EV startups like Tesla, Rivian, Lucid, and even VinFast from Vietnam, which is building an assembly and battery plant in North Carolina. Once they all get their plants up and running, all of those EV startups are going to employ another 38,000 workers, and none of them are UAW either. Put it all together, the foreign transplants plus the EV startups, and they will employ over 166,000 blue-collar workers in the United States. That's more than GM, Ford, and Stellantis put together. And that's what I mean when I say the UAW is losing market share. It's not as if the union hasn't tried to organize these plants, but it's been turned down every single time. And it wasn't the companies that turned them down. It was the workers at those plants. They just didn't see what was in it for them to join the UAW. The union blames anti-union efforts by the companies. But I don't buy it. Not after 40 years. I blame the union's organizing strategy, which has been an abject failure. The UAW always tries to turn its organizing efforts into a stand for social justice. And I'm all for social justice, but it hasn't worked. At Nissan's plant in Canton, Mississippi, for example, the union tried to make the organizing effort all about racial injustice. 80% of the workers in that plant are black. The union even brought in big names like Bernie Sanders and Danny Glover and a bunch of local Baptist preachers to tell the workers to take a stand for racial justice and vote for the UAW. Instead, the workers rejected the union by more than 2-1. What the UAW should be doing is show them the money. UAW workers make more money. They've got better benefits, and they've got profit sharing. At Stellantis, each UAW worker got a check for $14,000 last year. That's how you sell the idea of joining a union. That's how you show people what's in it for them. Show them the money. Here's how bad it's gotten. Elon Musk recently invited the UAW to organize the workers at his plants. But it wasn't an invitation. Elon was taunting them. He's daring the UAW to try and organize his workers because he knows they'll reject the union. Elon is just rubbing it in their face. There's a number of reasons why foreign automakers and EV startups do not want the UAW. Unscheduled absenteeism is a big problem at a lot of UAW plants. Let me explain. Scheduled absenteeism is when you have scheduled ahead of time that you're not coming into work because you got a doctor's appointment or a family situation or whatever. The company can plan for that. Unscheduled absenteeism is when somebody just goes AWOL, absent without leave. One of GM's top labor negotiators told me a couple of years back that absenteeism can run as high as 25% at some GM plants. That means every day, 1 out of 4 people just doesn't show up. And so GM's got to hire more people to cover for them, and that drives up labor costs. When I asked the people at Honda's manufacturing complex in Marysville, Ohio, about unscheduled absenteeism, they looked at me quizzically. "What do you mean, unscheduled absenteeism?" they asked. So I told them, when somebody goes AWOL. They were horrified. "You can't do that here. You'll get fired," they told me. But the UAW doesn't want to talk about absenteeism. It denies it's even a problem. Even worse, the union defends total screw-ups who should be fired. About a decade ago, a local television reporter in Detroit caught 9 workers from Chrysler's Jefferson Avenue plant at a park on their lunch break, pounding down beers and smoking doobs. They did it every day. When he showed up with his cameraman, they jumped in their cars and scattered right back to the plant. Because it made the nightly news, Chrysler immediately fired these knuckleheads. But the union fought to get them reinstated. And even though it took 2 years of arbitration, they all got their jobs back. Back during the Great Recession, when the auto industry was in a meltdown and Detroit was spiraling into a depression, I got a call from a woman who worked at the Cadillac engine plant in Livonia, Michigan. She called me out of the blue. I didn't know who she was. I'd never heard of her before. And she was crying on the phone. She was scared that her plant was going to close and that she would lose her job. She called me because I'm in the media. She was hoping I could do something, or at least give her some ray of hope. There's nothing I could do. There was nothing I could say. She complained bitterly about the people who would go out in the parking lot on their break and get drunk or high. She criticized herself and her fellow workers for turning a blind eye to it. And she blamed her union for not doing anything about it. Sure enough, the plant closed and they all lost their jobs. Turning a blind eye to people who should be fired is a big problem in the union. This is exactly how all the corruption started that now has 2 past UAW presidents and about a dozen union officers in federal prison for stealing millions of dollars from the union. Another problem, work rules. Very restrictive work rules that are designed to create extra union jobs that are not really needed. Is there a loose bolt on that machine over there? If you're a line worker, you better not touch it. You better call a millwright to bring a wrench and tighten it up. Does that machine over there need to be plugged in? Don't you dare touch it. You need to call an electrician. In some places, it got to be so ridiculous that if there was a piece of wood on the floor from a packing crate, you had to call a carpenter to come pick it up. These are all skilled trade jobs, and it takes forever to get certified as a skilled tradesman in the UAW. It takes 4 years to get your journeyman's card as an electrician, a millwright, a pipe fitter, or whatever. 4 years for one skill. Compare that to Honda. They train their people in only 8 months, and they don't come out of that program with only one skill. They're trained in multiple disciplines so they can handle multiple problems, like troubleshooting issues on the line, fixing machinery, reprogramming robots, whatever it takes. Honda doesn't even call them skilled tradespeople. They call them maintenance workers, and it works out just fine. Honda has very high levels of uptime and superb levels of quality and safety. So why am I pointing all this out? It's not to piss off the UAW or UAW members. I have the utmost respect for the vast majority of union workers. And by vast majority, I mean over 95%. These are the men and women who come into work every day and put in an honest day's worth of labor. They're intelligent. They're well-trained. They take pride in their work. I'm hoping the new constitution at the UAW changes things. This is something that the feds forced on the union because of its corruption scandal. Now, workers will directly elect their union leaders instead of voting for a slate of representatives who then elect a leader. I'm hoping direct elections will lead to the kind of changes that I'm talking about. And make no mistake, thousands of UAW jobs are under threat. It's not just the transplants, it's not just the EV startups. It's the transition to electric cars, which will probably eliminate 1 out of 4 union jobs, or about 40,000 UAW jobs. The UAW is going to continue to lose market share unless it can organize other automakers. But it doesn't stand a chance of doing that unless it addresses absenteeism, restrictive work rules, and bad workers and leaders who should be fired. And that's why I said at the very beginning of this presentation that if the UAW does not change, it's toast. Anyway, that's how I see it, and I welcome your feedback.